So maybe you've heard before that you can't be absolutely certain of anything except your own mind. Or maybe you've heard another saying like, I think, therefore I am. Something like that. Well, if you ever heard that, uh, what you've heard is called solipsism. And today I'm going to explain to you why solipsism, or the idea that you can't be absolutely certain of anything except your own existence, is total BS. All right, so let's look at the Wikipedia definition here. So solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside of one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside of the mind. Okay, so this is like brain of that bullshit, honestly. Um, so before we continue, I need to define some terms, and I think it would be helpful to kind of go over these terms. So the first term I want to go over is proscribe. So a proscription means you are making a statement that discourages one from doing something. Okay, so if you make a prescriptive statement, you're saying you should not do something. So a good way to remember this, a mnemonic, would be proscription shares the same prefix as prohibit. So when you prohibit something, you're saying don't do this. Okay, so that's what proscribe means. It's a statement that discourages you from doing something. So the antonym of this is prescribe. So prescribe means that you are making a statement, a prescription, uh, encouraging someone to do something. So when you prescribe, you're saying you should do this. A mnemonic would be the word prescription medicine. It shares the same prefix once again. And prescription medicine, you can think of like a doctor saying they're prescribing you this medicine. This medicine is good for you. You should take it. So prescription means you are encouraging someone to do something. And the third one is description. We all know what description means, so I don't need to go too much into it, but I'll just say it is you're making an observation and then you're conveying that into words, okay? So those are the three terms I want to go over. So the statement that solipsists make is that you can't be absolutely certain of anything except your own existence. This is not correct. It is phrased as a descriptive statement, but it's false because it's not describing what human beings are doing. Okay, so certainty and all that, um, because, well, I'll get into why in a second. A more correct way of putting it would be you should not be absolutely certain of anything except your own existence. Now, that by itself is not necessarily false, but it's bad, which for reasons I'm going to get into in a second. But that is a proscriptive statement. So actually, the solipsist position, if it's going to be honest, is not actually descriptive. It's proscriptive. It's telling you you shouldn't be absolutely certain of anything except your own existence. Now, I'm here to challenge that and say that's total bullshit, and you should be absolutely certain of many things. And here's why. Because all solipsism does is it manifests as gaslighting yourself and gaslighting other people. That is the only way that it materially manifests as. So I'm gonna bring up an image here of a poster from the movie Gaslight. So some of you may have heard the word gaslight, but maybe don't know where it comes from or even what it means. Gaslight means you're causing people through your words or your behaviors to question what they know and believe, and it gets its name from this movie, which I believe is based on a play uh, called Gaslight. So it's the eponymous uh, movie which popularized the word. In the movie, it depicts a woman who is being subjected to psychological torture by her husband, who does different things, like, for example, dimming the gas lights in the house, but then telling her that he's not dimming or the gas lights are not dim. And he's doing it in such a persuasive way that she, instead of challenging him on his obvious lies, she begins to question herself and what she knows and what she believes. And this drives her insane. It's torture, psychological torture. And that is exactly what solipsists are doing. Because, like I said, they are not describing reality, they are making a proscriptive statement. But the problem is that their proscription is inherently flawed. Um, so the reason why it's flawed is because they are lacking confidence in their senses, which perceive the universe around them. So they think to themselves the only sense that's truly reliable is their awareness or awakeness. Whereas the senses, they distrust. Now, dumb person would say, well, you can't trust your senses because there's you can't trust your sense of vision. Like you're saying that it says gaslight here, but there's people who are nearsighted and farsighted. They got bad vision. They can't even see the E on the sight chart. Yeah, there are people who can't even see the E on the sight chart at the eye doctor's office. Yeah, so that's the reason why you can't totally be absolutely certain of your eyesight's. It's just not. You gotta have less certainty. No, no. That's gaslighting. Um, so the the argument that's being made by the dumbass is called a hasty generalization from weak induction, and I'm not gonna go into depth about defining every term I'm using, but long story short, what that means is that you're using a limited number of examples to then draw a generalized conclusion. The problem with this logic is that it's not always true. It's a very weak form of uh, reasoning. So they call that inductive reasoning. And when you have a limited number of examples that support your conclusion, its weakness is revealed because it's counterbalanced by all the examples to the contrary. So there's many more people who have good vision than there are people who have really, really bad vision who can't see the E on the sight chart. So yeah, this is a bad thing that people do. You know, your lack of confidence is disturbing to me, to quote Darth Vader. Um, you can trust your senses, okay? You can trust your senses. So why don't we get into a couple of bullet points here? Let me cue this up. Let me bring up my janky bullet points here. Okay, and we'll kind of go through them one by one. Well, I'll make my case with these janky ass bullet points here. Okay, there we go. Okay. Certainty tells you nothing about the truth value of the subject you are certain/uncertain of. Okay, so when you are certain of something, it is unquantifiable. Okay? What that means is that you can't put it into numbers. When it comes to individual certainty, how certain or uncertain you are about something, it's just a feeling. Okay, now there are things like confidence intervals, and you can see them in like certain systems like statistics, but that's a very, very different thing. Like we're talking about how certain you are as an individual about the truth value of a proposition, and that's up to you. You know, you decide for yourself how certain you are about some things. But what you can't do is you can't tell other people how certain or uncertain they are about certain things, and you certainly can't tell them if they're right or wrong about their certainty. That's up to them to decide that. You can't assert it for them. It's certainly not descriptive, and you shouldn't do that to them either, because, like I said, all it manifests as is just gaslighting. So certainty tells you nothing about the truth value. So how often have you been certain about something and were wrong about it? Okay, like maybe, for example, you took an exam in school and you were certain I aced that test. Then it turned out you got a C. That's happened to me before. That happens all the time. You can be certain about something and it turns out you were wrong. Okay, and it works the other way. Sometimes you might be uncertain about something and turns out you were right. You know, like maybe you were uncertain about the answer of this question. You give an answer and turns out you got it right. Or maybe you were uncertain about how well you did on the exam. Maybe you thought you failed and turned out you got the best grade in the class. That's happened to me and that's happened to people I know. Happens all the time. Certainty or uncertainty tells you nothing about the truth value of the subject you are certain or uncertain of. Okay? But right? Okay, so you can be certain of things and be wrong, right or wrong. So that's the thing I just talked about. Um, Getting ahead of myself here. Left my butt off on a cliffhanger here. And it was see how bad my certainty is here. Proof in action. You can be wrong about the substance of what you were certain of, but your certainty was not wrong. Okay, let's read that one more time. You can be wrong about the substance of what you were certain of, but your certainty was not wrong. So this is the thing that's going to drive some people crazy, gaslighty crazy. Um, so let's go back to that previous example. Let's say you were certain you aced that exam, but it turned out you got an F. Well, it turned out that how certain you are was actually not wrong. Like when you were certain that you aced the test, that certainty, that feeling wasn't wrong. You genuinely were certain that you got an A. It's just you didn't. You failed it. Um, but the certainty wasn't wrong, right? So if someone says they're absolutely certain that their eyesight is good enough to read what's on this screen that you're looking at right now, their certainty is not wrong, right? It's not wrong. They can't be wrong about their certainty as long as they're being honest, you know. And that's also where like the gaslighting thing comes from. Like you can honestly reduce your certainty because you're gaslighting yourself or you allowed other people to gaslight you. Why are you doing that? Don't let them do that to you. Okay? And the reason is because of my final point, assuming my certainty about what the final point is correct. The reliability of our senses to perceive the universe are contingent upon our mortality, not to be confused with morality. All right. So some people make a distinction between absolute certainty and this other like nonsensical label, which they call maximal certainty. So I probably should have defined this at least in the beginning. Like absolute certainty is supposed to mean 100%. I am certain nothing can, change my mind except getting an F, I guess, in hindsight. So that's what absolute certainty is supposed to mean. Maximal certainty is supposed to be a lesser degree of certainty. And it's such a stupid distinction because it means nothing. Because, like I said, Certainty is unquantifiable. It is merely a feeling, and feelings cannot be quantified. Um, so that's the thing. So like when we're talking about like senses, like sensory input, like how do you know your sense of sight is reliable? How do you know your sense of touch when you're touching things? You're touching a woman's boobs, you're touching a woman's legs, you know, you're touching like how do you know your sense of touch is reliable? How do you know the things you're touching are real? How do you know your sense of smell is real when you smell shit? You still smell shit in the air. There's shit around here. Okay, the reliability of our senses is contingent upon our mortality. So the reason why we know our senses are reliable is because we're mortal and we live in a hostile universe that is inhospitable to human life. We are weak and frail animals, much far more weak and frail than we would like to admit. And if our senses are unreliable, it will incur harm and perhaps even death. So if you can't see, if you're blind, oh, I don't know where I'm going. Well, I'm bumping into walls. Whoops, bumped into a wall, fell into lava, fell off a cliff. You're gonna die. Um, and you won't be thinking about these things anymore and questioning how reliable your senses are because you would be too busy being dead. So the reliability of our senses is 100% contingent upon our mortality. If we were immortal, our senses are useless. Which ironically, there's only one being in the whole universe that can get away with this, and that's God, which doesn't exist. But I'll make a video about that later. I promise. Maybe. I'm not too certain about that. We'll leave the certainty up to time to decide. But yeah. Um, gaslighting yourself and not being absolutely certain of like your sense of sight or allowing other people to gaslight you into um, you know, uh, reducing your certainty of your sense of sight, for example, is just it's silly, it's stupid. The difference between maximal certainty and absolute certainty is a distinction without a difference. You are merely applying a new label since you are introducing a sense that you have gaslit yourself on. But you don't have to. You don't have to gaslight yourself, right? Because it's not because solipsism is not descriptive. It's proscriptive. Okay, like please get that to your head. I guess I didn't get into prescriptive, so I'll use that word right now. I'm going to make a prescriptive statement. Okay, you guys remember what prescriptive means? If you don't, rewind the video, or rather, click the mouse on a little earlier in the video, on the timeline. Uh, you can be I encourage you people to be absolutely certain of certain things. Like if you have 20/20 vision, please be absolutely certain of your sense of vision. We have to live in a real world, is what I'm trying to say here. Um, I think in the Drumpf era, the era of Drumpf, who has popularized the word gaslighting, it has revealed the flaw of lacking certainty in the things that we know and believe. And I feel like it's absolutely important to have confidence because people respect confidence. Even though I said before, how certain you are about things does not necessarily tell you about the truth value of the substance you are certain or uncertain of. It does have an impact on other people, especially dumb people, because they respect people who are confident. Okay, so if you're confident in your beliefs, people are going to believe you. Okay, whether rightly or wrongly, I'm just telling you this is a good way to be persuasive. And sometimes you got to be persuasive, especially about the things that you know and are absolutely certain of. All right, guys, that's it. Yeah, this video is going to kind of form the foundation of another video that I might make in the future about God, but we'll see. All right, see you guys later.